We just talked about scheduling your LSAT study time and how you want to do a bunch of chunks throughout the week. You should put them on your calendar the weekend before and make a commitment to showing up for them. One thing to think about when you're deciding how long your session should be is that the longest continuous period of work on the LSAT is the first 3 sections. They go back to back to back, and they're each 35 minutes. So on the day of the LSAT, you are going to be doing work for an hour and 45 minutes straight. And then you're going to get a 15-minute break, and then you're going to do work for another hour. And so you could do that in your study sessions too. You could work for 2 hours and then take a 15-minute break and then do another hour, and that'll feel like an LSAT in terms of the mental fatigue that you're going to feel. That's a good way to sort of exercise your brain and get ready for the stamina that's required on test day. Now I want to talk about what those sessions should look like, what that 2-hour session should look like, what that 1-hour session should look like. And a good guiding principle is to pretend like you're showing up for a private tutoring session. Pretend like you're spending a ridiculous amount of money per hour to meet with a private tutor, only that person happens to be me and I'm on your computer instead of meeting you in person. But you should show up on time and ready to learn. You should turn off your cell phone, try to minimize any distractions that you have, close other browser windows, and really focus on getting the most out of those 2 hours as if you were spending 2 hours with a really high-end tutor. When you study, it's good to go someplace busy but quiet, like the common room in a university library, or maybe a coffee shop, as long as it's not too noisy and the music's not too loud. But on the day of your LSAT, there's going to be a little bit of background noise. There's going to be some paper shuffling from students around you. Somebody might have the sniffles. And so it's good to get acclimated to at least a little bit of distraction, to feel surrounded by people and still be able to focus on what you're doing is good. Although, of course, if you have an ideal place that's totally quiet, that's fine too. Just recognize that on test day, you're going to have a little bit more distraction than what you're used to. And having a printer around is a bonus, specifically if you're going to be doing reading comprehension, or full sections, or a practice test. Those are the 3 situations where you'd really want to have access to a printer. Now, of course, with full sections or practice tests, you can print those out at home ahead of time and take them to the library or take them to the coffee shop. When you're doing reading comprehension, the pool is going to assign you something according to your skill level, and so you'll want to be able to print it there on the spot. That's why maybe a university library is the ideal place to study, but if you don't have access to one, like I said, a coffee shop is fine. Home is fine, and you need a printer specifically when you're doing reading comp, full practice sections, or practice tests. Finally, you want to get 2 notebooks and take handwritten notes. You could just get 1 notebook that has 2 sections, but you should absolutely take handwritten notes. Study after study shows that students who take handwritten notes have greater comprehension and greater retention compared to students who took typewritten notes. And they suppose that the reason why is because handwriting is slower than typing for most people. And when you're constrained in that way, when you can't handwrite as fast as someone's speaking, it forces you to put it in your own words and to think about what's really important. And I think it's that critical attention that leads to better retention and better understanding. If you can just type what your professor is saying word for word, you don't have to engage in it in any critical way. You can just it's just sort of an automatic thing. It goes into your ears and out your fingers, and you're not thinking about it critically. So the 2 notebooks, the first one is going to be for course notes. These are notes that you're going to take while you're watching lesson videos, and you can just do this chronologically. Just make sure that you put the date down, and maybe you put the section type down. So if it's logical reasoning, you can just go LR. If it's reading comp, maybe you go RC, and then for games, just a G. And then that way you can go back through your notes that you've taken as you've watched all the videos, things that you thought were especially important. This is also a great way to keep yourself engaged while you're watching the videos. It helps keep your attention on what I'm saying. And then you're also going to have a lessons learned log. This is essentially an error log, although I like lessons learned better, because in each mistake that you make, there is an opportunity to improve. Like, it's nice to get things right. Everybody feels good when they get questions right, but getting a question right doesn't teach you anything. Whereas if you get a question wrong, that's an opportunity to improve. And so I think those are much more valuable, and you want to make sure that you extract all the value that you can out of it. You want to think about each mistake a lot, more so than you might be comfortable with, because you want to try hard to never make that same mistake again. And so I'm going to clean this page up and talk about what I think you should put in your lessons learned log. Every time you miss a question, you should make an entry in your lessons learned log. Whether it's a logical reasoning question from a quiz, or a question from a practice game, or a reading comp passage, you should write down where the question came from, and then your goal is to come up with some kind of change, some alteration to your approach, so that you're less likely to miss a similar question in the future. You want to turn every mistake into a lesson, And then that way you won't have to make very many mistakes. It's okay to make a mistake. That's an opportunity to improve. But I'd hate to see you make the same mistake over and over and over again. And if you don't make any changes to your process and you encounter a similar question in the future, you're likely to have a similar outcome. So in order to get better, you need to make changes, and that's the goal here. So there are 6 questions that you should ask yourself to help you come up with the change you need to make. And a lot of these students already answer, but very few people ask themselves all 6 of them. And I know it seems like a lot, but remember, my goal here is to help you maximize the value that you get out of every mistake. So the first question is, why is the right answer right? And almost everybody does this. This isn't earth-shattering. People who miss questions often ask themselves, why is that right answer right? And you can either try and figure it out on your own, or you can watch the explanation video. And I think you should try to figure it out on your own first, and then watch the explanation video. And coupled with that is, why is my answer wrong? Now, fewer people do this because it's unpleasant to acknowledge that you made a mistake. But there is something bad about your answer choice. It doesn't satisfy the question that was asked, and you need to come to terms with that. There is a good reason why your answer choice is wrong. And I see students try to fight the test sometimes and argue that their answer choice is right when it's not the right answer. And you're just getting in your own way when you do that. So it's okay to acknowledge that you made a mistake. This isn't an indictment of your ability. Again, it's an opportunity to improve. But the first thing you need to do is understand what went wrong. So both of these questions are geared towards understanding what went wrong. But if you just answer these 2 questions, you haven't made any changes to your approach. And so you're still in the same position you were before. You're still likely to make the same mistake again in the future. It's really the next 4 questions that are going to lead to the lesson and the subsequent change in your approach. Once you understand why the right answer is right and the wrong answer is wrong, you got to ask yourself why you liked the wrong answer. And this doesn't always have a satisfying explanation. Sometimes you like answer choice E because you don't like anything. You didn't like A, B, C, or D, and you didn't like E either. You just didn't like any of the answer choices. And so this isn't always a satisfying question, but sometimes it is. If there was something enticing about the wrong answer that attracted you to it, you need to know that whatever that feature wasn't enough to make it right. And so if you see a similar feature in the future, you don't want to be attracted by it. So if there was something appealing about the wrong answer, you need to note that so that you don't get drawn into it in the future. It's not enough to make an answer right. And similarly, why didn't you like the right answer? See, now we're getting at the cause of the mistake. Like, why did you avoid it? Or why didn't it stand out to you as a right answer? Maybe it had some vocabulary that made you uncomfortable. Maybe it didn't say everything that you wanted it to say. But the other 4 answer choices said things that were wrong, and so it ended up being the best answer choice. For whatever reason, you didn't like this answer choice, and you need to ask yourself why. Because in the future, you need to like this answer choice. So if there was something that you didn't like about it, you have to recognize that whatever feature that wasn't enough to rule it out. It wasn't enough to make it wrong because it still ended up being the right answer. So this is about understanding the cause of your mistake. Here, you need to understand the mistake itself, and then you need to understand the cause of it. Why didn't I like the wrong answer? Why did I like the wrong answer, and why didn't I like the right one? But we still haven't made any changes to our behavior yet. For that, we need to ask ourselves questions 5 and 6. Next time, how will I get into the right answer? I won't be put off by the thing I didn't like about it, and I'll realize that it has some good qualities that will make me like it the next time. I need to come up with some way to feel better about that answer choice. I didn't like it this time, but now I recognize that in hindsight it was pretty good, and I think next time I could get into it. And how will I avoid the wrong answer? How will I avoid being enticed by whatever made the wrong answer choice wrong? By answering these 2 questions, I'm coming up with a change to my approach. I'm coming up with something that I'm going to do differently next time so that I don't make this mistake again. I need to understand the mistake. I need to understand the root cause of it, the thing that enticed me about the wrong answer, the reason that I avoided the right answer, and then I need to stop doing that. I need to be okay with that right answer, despite whatever put me off of it. And I need to avoid that wrong answer, despite whatever was enticing about it. But I need to come up with a lesson. And so this might take the shape of, I didn't read the whole answer choice. Maybe the first two-thirds of the wrong answer sounded good, but the tail end of it is what made it bad. And so my takeaway lesson is read the whole answer choice. Or maybe I didn't like the right answer because it has some words I didn't know. And so my lesson there is don't eliminate an answer just because you don't fully understand it, right? If there's an answer choice that has vocabulary that you're uncomfortable with, keep it in the running. And then if you can find good reasons to eliminate the other 4 answer choices, you might end up liking an answer choice that you don't fully understand every word of. That happens sometimes. But you need to take a lesson away from every mistake. So what you're going to write down in the log is the question and the lesson that you're going to take away from it. And these 6 questions you can just write on the first page of your log just to remind yourself what's the process that I need to go to or go through in order to come up with a change to my approach. And so this kind of sums up our lesson of how to study. If you have any questions about this or anything about how to schedule your studying, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll give you some personalized advice based on how you're doing so far, or if you really get bogged down on a question and the explanation isn't satisfying, go ahead and shoot us an email or a text message and we'll help you get to the bottom of it.